Mental health catastrophe. Few options for residents as care homes close. Remember when Reagan did this and it turned out horrible? Well, history is repeating itself. This summer, Tom Gray will lose his home. A slim man with hunched shoulders and a halting voice. Gray, 72, has schizophrenia. Before he landed in Carmen Palarca's Borden care home 11 years ago, he spent 20 years living on the streets. Many of them huddled in a doorway across from a San Francisco Whole Foods. I feel kind of sad and worried, Gray said quietly, sitting in the home's small kitchen. He hadn't yet received official notice from Palarca of her plans to close, but knew it was likely. The planned closure of yet another Borden care home. There are no reliable statewide data on the decrease of homes serving the specific population, but since 2012, San Francisco has lost more than a third of licensed residential facilities that serve people under 60 and more than a quarter of those serving older clients. Much of the decline has been in small, home-like facilities like Palarca's, which provide food, laundry, and medication help, and are more likely to accept low-income people with mental illnesses. Los Angeles, which has a large portion of the state's Borden cares, has lost more than 200 beds for low-income people with serious mental illness in the past year. Advocates say the state needs to collect better data. If legislators don't get into this, we're in big trouble. The housing crisis has placed those concerned about Borden care residents with mental illness in a strange predicament. Many now find themselves advocating for facilities they consider to be of poor quality and outmoded. That's because the alternatives they see, homelessness, incarceration, long-term placement in nursing homes or locked facilities, are worse. So imagine if we had something like a public bank where we could pump money into stuff like this, instead of giving it to Wells Fargo or some other for-profit institution each year. All the money that residents pay to them, residents could be pumping into a local bank, which could help them out directly and could also help other services in the city. Imagine if we did something about our housing crisis in general that would make facilities like this more easier to maintain. Like grandfathering these organizations in at a decent rent, subsidizing more subsidizing more subsidization. I don't think that's the word. But more and more things are closing, and we talk about when Reagan did this initially, when Reagan essentially created Skid Row. We look on that as such a horrible moment in our society, and such a horrible thing that we did, just turning away all these people who needed help. And we haven't learned from that, and we're still doing it. It's still happening. In fact, this is, I think the economist Richard Wolff said this is pumped up Reaganomics. I'm paraphrasing him, but we're living under pumped up Reaganomics. It's even worse than it was back then. And Mel Tel-Karabne is a really amazing activist in the Los Angeles area, and he does a ton for homelessness. Every city could use somebody like him. He does amazing programs. He's been on the show before. He'll be on again. And the reason he started doing what he does is because he came to the United States from a different country, came to Los Angeles, drove through Skid Row, and couldn't believe what he was seeing. It blew his mind that there were people living this way. And it's something we just accept as reality in the United States. It's something we just accept as reality, especially in Los Angeles. There are tent cities in every neighborhood in Los Angeles. I live in the area, I can tell you. These people that, it's just Skid Row. No, it's not. Even if it was just Skid Row, it's still completely unacceptable. But it's everywhere. I go by homeless camps on my way to my gym. I used to have a homeless in my old apartment complex. There was a homeless tent city. I'm sure it's still there. I just don't live in that apartment anymore, but I'm sure it's still there. And we just accept it as reality. And then sometimes when people see this, it just blows their freaking mind. And what are we doing? We're continuing to turn away people who need help. In California, the 5th largest GDP in the world. And we can't help people with mental health issues who can't be on their own, who need assistance. We can't help them. We can't get a rail line from San Francisco to San Diego. We can't give everybody health care. 5th largest GDP in the world. Countries poorer than the state of California have better services for people, have better health services, give everybody health care. Provide housing and support for people who suffer from schizophrenia. But we can't do it in California. We're supposed to be a blue utopia too, by the way. We're supposed to be the progressive bubble in the United States. California's not. They're victim to the same neoliberalism, to the same surrender to corporations. And that's going on in other quote-unquote blue dots too. That goes on in Portland, Oregon. That goes on in Seattle, Washington. That goes on in New York City. Andrew Cuomo, the supposed progressive, screws over the homeless in New York City. This is what happens when you have an Overton window shifted so far to the right, it's unbelievable. And you just keep voting for the lesser of two evils. And this is why we need to mobilize in our communities. We need to mobilize in our communities and start getting active and start alliances for causes, start initiatives, get people who are taking on causes, get people who are working on getting ballot initiatives on the local ballots, and get people who are also running for office at the local level. That's the only way we're going to start turning this around. It has to happen in our backyards. It's not going to happen from the top to the bottom. It's going to happen from the bottom up. So that's a sad story. That's just really sad. What else can you say? That's just really sad. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and